Hello and welcome back to Pedamology. Today, we're going to talk about something that I believe needs to fundamentally change in medicine, making clinical trial participation a standard of care, not a last resort. Right now, clinical trials are often viewed as only for patients who have run out of options. But that mindset is outdated. And honestly, it's holding back patients, providers, and progress. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what standard of care actually means, why clinical trials are not experimental in the way people think, where the current system fails patients, and how we can realistically integrate trials into routine care. Think of this as a mini course on modern clinical trial integration. Standard of care refers to the best known evidence based treatment that clinicians routinely offer for a condition. It's based on clinical guidelines, regulatory approval, real world data, and consensus among experts. What many people don't realize is this: today's standard of care exists only because of yesterday's clinical trials. Every chemotherapy regimen, every immunotherapy, every targeted therapy, none of it became standard without patients participating in trials first. So the question becomes, why do we treat clinical trials as separate from standard of care when they're literally how standard of care is created? One of the most common fears I hear is, I don't want to be a guinea pig. Well, let's clear this up. Modern clinical trials are heavily regulated, ethically reviewed, data monitored in real time, and designed with patient safety as the top priority. In fact, many trials today compare a new therapy against current standard of care, or add a new drug on top of standard treatment, or test therapies with strong biological rationale and early safety data. This means many patients in trials receive equal or better care than they would receive outside of a trial, and often with more monitoring, not less. Here's a hard truth: clinical trials are frequently introduced after multiple lines of therapy have failed, the patient is more frail, the disease is more aggressive, or few trial options are available. This isn't because trials are unsafe, it's because of provider awareness gaps, time constraints in clinic, assumptions about patient willingness, and system level barriers. By the time trials are discussed, patients are already exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Imagine instead if trials were discussed at diagnosis, or at each treatment decision point, or alongside standard options, not after them. That's what true integration looks like. Making clinical trial participation a standard of care does not mean forcing patients into the trials, or removing approved treatments, or treating research as experimental guesswork. It means that every eligible patient is informed about trials as a routine option, or trials are considered equal to approved therapies when appropriate, or trial screening is embedded into clinical workflows, or shared decision making includes research participation. In other words, a clinical trial should be something you consider, not something you stumble into. Now, let's talk about what patients actually gain. Patients on clinical trials often receive access to cutting edge therapies, more frequent monitoring and follow up, multidisciplinary oversight, and early access to innovation. But there's also something deeper. Trials give patients options. They give patients hope grounded in science and a sense of contribution to future care. And importantly, patients still have the right to withdraw at any time. Participation is a choice, an empowered one. The shift isn't just good for patients, it also benefits physicians, research staff, and healthcare systems. When trials are integrated into care, enrollment becomes more efficient, data quality improves, innovation accelerates, and health disparities can be addressed more intentionally. And providers stop viewing trials as extra work and start seeing them as part of comprehensive care delivery. So, how do we actually make this happen? Well, here's what needs to shift: education. Trials must be explained early and often without all the jargon. Clinical culture. Trials should be discussed as options, not exceptions. Workflow integration. Trial screening should be automatic, not manual. policy, and reimbursement. Participation should not financially penalize patients or providers, and patient-centered communication. Conversations must focus on values, goals, and preferences, not fear. So instead of asking, should this patient go on a clinical trial? We should be asking, why wouldn't we at least discuss one? That shift alone can change outcomes. Clinical trials are not the backup plan. They're how medicine advances, how standard of cares are created, and how patients gain access to the future of care today. Making clinical trial participation a standard of care is not radical. It's responsible, it's ethical, and it's overdue. If you found this video helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear it, a patient, a caregiver, or a clinician. This is Pedamology, where I make clinical research understandable, accessible, and human. I'll see you next time.